Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Mordew. It's been a long time since I've been with you for LinkedIn Live, so this is a special bonus episode. Today, we're taking a slightly different path to what our usual focus is. Typically, we shine a light on the career journeys, the challenges and successes of business leaders from a diverse range of sectors. But today, we're turning the spotlight inwards. And I'm actually chatting with one of our own business leaders to discuss an exciting new talent advisory service that we launched with Green Bean late last year. So I'm delighted to have Kerri Rankin with us today. Kerri's Director of Operations, and she's got over 15 years of experience in account management and operational delivery of volume recruitment solutions. She's a powerhouse of knowledge, and what she doesn't know about recruitment isn't worth knowing. So welcome, Kerri. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. All those are big statements to live up to, Julie.
Well, it's the first time we've done this with ourselves and, shining the spotlight on us. So thank you for being the first. But we have got something exciting to talk about, something that's new. So before we dive into what we're here to talk about, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, the type of clients and accounts you've worked on, and about your experience in recruitment?
Yeah, so I have been with the business for 16 years. So I joined as originally a commercial temps controller, so an ad hoc temps desk. I've worked in account management for large volume national accounts and small localized accounts. I've worked as the head of volume talent, so really looking at strategy and recruitment process delivery and design. And I am now currently in the role of Associate Director of Operations for Green Bean, which is obviously our RPO arm of the business.
Fantastic. So quite a extensive knowledge within those 16 years with the business. So tell me a little bit about what is the talent advisory services and what prompted the move to move into this sector?
Yeah, well, I mean, talent advisory services was launched from conversations that we had with clients, and it's one of those things that can happen. You go out, I guess you have conversations about the RPO and the business model that you have, and from that incubates different ideas and solutions that we could bring to market. But quite often, Julie, clients had a need for part of the process that we had tasted our talent team. They really didn't have a challenge, but actually they talked to us about real pain points that they had outside of that process. So we took that away and we tried to come up with a solution, and the solution was TAS, Talent Advisory Services. So they are a set of modular, off-the-shelf, if you like, solutions that we can give to clients where they don't need that full RPO service model. So that includes recruitment process diagnostic, assessment centre design and facilitation, recruitment marketing diagnostic. We know that we live in this digital world now more than ever. Vetting and pre-employment screening, and some market insight as well.
And how's that been received by industry? So you've got some examples of you've worked with clients on these. So tell us a little bit, first of all, of how you've helped businesses adapt their inclusive recruitment practices and how that's helped them to attract a diverse range of talent.
Yeah, I mean, each client is different, Julie, to be honest. So I guess the first thing to acknowledge is the conversations that we have with clients that are at a varying range of their journey. So if we look at inclusive practices, I want to really be talking to people that are at the start of their journey or think they're 30% of the way there, where we can have a real open and honest conversation about where they've got to and actually what they could be doing better. or differently. You know, we see all of these articles on LinkedIn, and it's all of the good stuff about what people are doing right now and the successes that they've had, and that's great. But actually, I really want to encourage people to start talking about their journeys when they're at more of this the earlier stages, because actually that's when people need help, and that's when they need the ideas, and that's when the interaction needs to happen in terms of what they could be doing differently. But we look at the recruitment process full end to end, and we start to unpick things. We understand if they have a strategy, what they've done so far. We'll look at their talent value proposition. And I guess in terms of what's out there in the market, we really need to be looking at how accessible that is. So that can look at things like the language that's used in a job advertisement. So we talk all the time about, you know, that we have to really bring things to life in terms of what goes on inside of an organisation. But actually, when we put that out to market, is that accessible? You know, some of the clients that we have dealt with have you know, certain targets to hit in terms of their AD&I journeys, and they'll have specific strategies. And we really need to look to understand what they've done so far and how we can support them get there and reach that. So that could be, you know, looking at job descriptions. We'll all write a job description, you know, and we'll have our input about what that needs to look like, what the essential and desirable criteria need to be. But the language that's used in those job descriptions needs to attract the audience, and that needs to be inclusive. You know, it needs to be accessible. We can use Hemingway, for example, to analyse all of that. Or, you know, gender decoders. Total Jobs has got an excellent gender decoder that we can use just to understand if the language that is being used is more feminine than masculine, or vice versa. So it's really about understanding what's out there and just assessing the tools, and I guess bringing things to life that people might not be aware of. Again, digital footprint. We quite often I'll go into organisations and they'll have these excellent, you know, events that they'll do, and they'll have a catalogue and a diary full of inclusive events that they're attending, or disability confident, for example. All of these additional steps that they're taking to really, really push that journey. But it isn't represented in the digital footprint. So the marketing diagnostic that we'll do, we'll say, great, okay, your recruitment process is excellent. You use all of these additional tools. We know that the language that you're using is correct. We know that the accessibility in terms of when you and how you are doing interviews and, you know, SIFT criteria is all there. But actually, do you talk about that in terms of your talent value proposition? Do people know that, you know, that's the sort of thing that you do, and that actually you're an organisation that really promotes that wide culture? People want more these days, that they want to be part of an organisation where actually the culture is varied, you know, and everything's accessible. So it's really to get under the skin and look at everything. And then we can support with tracking everything. Everything's measured, you know, and it's nice to see that whole end-to-end journey about actually this is where the organisation was when we first started our conversations. This was the desire, and this was, you know, the map, the roadmap of where we wanted to be by X point, and you get visibility and tracking data to be able to see the impact that all of those changes have had along the way. And then we can stay, or we can go, we can leave, and we revisit, and we have a really positive ongoing relationship with some of our clients where, you know, we'll continuously review all of the different steps that they're taking. You know, technology and the things that you can use is changing every day. So I like to stay close just to make sure that, you know, their journey is still then going to, you know, organically grow. It is the technology changes to support.
So when you're doing the recruitment process diagnostic, what does that involve? Is that where you're going on site? What does the client receive? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the recruitment process diagnostic, we'll go on site. And so with some clients, it's just to address a specific pain point. So it can be that they've got a certain loss in the funnel, or actually that they need to understand how they can be better represented digitally, or they might want to understand how they can have a more accessible recruitment process, how they can have a more engaging recruitment process. So we go on site and we, I guess, talk to various stakeholders in terms of what their experiences are, what their struggles are, what they're doing at the moment, how they are capturing the candidate funnel. It can sometimes be about the next generation as well. So it can be about, we've got this excellent internal TA team, they're fantastic. It's about us really working in collaboration with the talent acquisition teams and complementing each other. Sometimes it can be about the design process of the next generation. How can we attract people that are at universities at the moment? Is it about attracting people that are at universities at the moment, or do we need to go deeper? Do we need to have a strategy that's looking at people that are school age at the moment, and how do we capture that audience? So we'll look at everything, Julie, and we're each client is different, and it's directly aligned to what their requirement is. But we'll go in, we'll understand what the requirement is. We'll sit with the business, we'll sit with the stakeholders, we look at the material that's used, we will look at how that organisation is represented, we'll look at the values. It can be as in-depth or as high level, I guess, as the desire is. And then we will take all of that information away, digest, and come back with recommendations. So that could be about how we levitate that business better in the marketplace digitally, how the organisation can become more accessible. Sometimes it's just about whether the correct advertising channels are being used. We worked with an organisation recently that had a landing in Wales. We know that there's quite a target in terms of Welsh speakers, so it was about actually resonating that organisation in that particular location, and how can they attract that target organisation whilst keeping their cultural funnel as wide as possible. So it's looking at all of that, and the measure and the rigor that's wrapped around it, to almost give their TA team back something that they can really work with and grow internally as well.
And I suppose the way the landscape is for talent at the moment, I would imagine pace is involved in this as well, that lengthy recruitment processes. What do you do in terms of looking at that? Is that an area you look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the talent advisory services that we have are the pre-screening and vetting service. So, candidates, we all know, are still, in demand. They're in need. Everyone is still fighting for that. So it's really about how we take each recruitment process to the next level, so that employers can become an employer of choice. If we do all of the work, and we do the recruitment diagnostic, for example, and it's hugely accessible, it's really engaging, it levitates them to the top of the market. They have this extraordinary recruitment funnel, which ultimately would be everyone's desire. But then, they hit a blocker with pre-screening and vetting, because we know that that's a pain point, Julie, in really regulated areas where some of these checks, the cycle of a DBS, for example, can be out of that organisation's control. It's about creating a vetting process that is engaging and reducing that as much as possible. And we can outsource. You can outsource that to Green Bean as part of the TAS services. But I think the vetting side of things, it's about making sure it's human interaction as well. Our vetting team here build the vetting process around each organisation. So, we can answer phones and use the language that organisations want us to, just to align with that organisation's marketing and internal values. But we have human interaction in terms of our chase cycle. A candidate could really join a process, We can make recommendations on face-to-face interviews. The culture is really, really brought to life. They are so geared up for this, joining an organisation, and then they have this lull period of 4, 6, 8 weeks where they're going through a vetting process and everything is automated and they're talking to a machine, not a person, and it really dives. And we know there's statistics all over the place you can see on the internet, but I think I read recently somewhere that 83% of candidates would drop out of a process if they're including the vetting process, this stage isn't engaging for them or it's too lengthy. So it's really important to get that slice right, and otherwise you'll do all of this really good work and you're going to lose those candidates. That human interaction, you know as well as I do, there's nothing quite like still speaking to a human. We've all done that, customer services journeys are great, and we love the ability to chat really quickly, and that's the world that we live in. But actually, these are people's jobs and they're people's lives.
Yeah, and it's such a life-changing decision for somebody and such an emotive thing that I think putting the human element back into this process is going to be a bit of a differentiator for businesses in trying to beat the competition for the talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the benefit of outsourcing that, Julie, is, HR teams need to do their day job. They've got a job to do, and TA teams have got a job to do, and the vetting piece, let's forget about all of the, the regulation behind it and the impact that it can have if it goes wrong. That's another conversation probably for another day. But these guys just 9 out of 10 times just don't have the time to spend, constantly on the phone, chasing
all that working up front, and then can lose them because of the end game.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, both of those things go hand in hand. Both of those things have to be right. They have to be engaging. They have to represent the brand. They have to represent the organisation. And, it has to be, centred around that person, not the applicant. But, it's the person that's going to join the organisation, because that's, the advert goes out, that's the first shot that an organisation has to really bring to life what that company's about. Then you look at all of the digital footprint, then you look at the accessibility, then we talk about this consistently engaging candidate process. The vetting and onboarding process absolutely has to mirror that. Otherwise, all of that hard work and effort will just dive down and you'll lose that.
So we've looked at how we attract and, through inclusive language, the recruitment marketing side of things. We've looked at how we onboard people post-vetting. What's in the middle, this assessment centre design and facilitation? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, we'll go into an organisation and we will look at how they currently assess candidates. That has to be open and fair. There has to be consistency in that approach. But it'll also, again, and we're going back to, I guess, the same themes. This has to be an engaging process. So we will look at what the market is doing in terms of that similar type of recruitment, but the measure that underpins the process that these organisations are going through. So it may be a company that just currently at the moment one-to-one interviews, and you don't have a dedicated person or a dedicated panel, but you've got varying managers interviewing for the same role, for example. Do they use the opportunity to sell that organisation and really bring to life the talent value proposition at that point? So we'll look in terms of training around that and really how that's brought to market, because that's an excellent opportunity. Even if a candidate isn't quite right for the role for whatever reason, we need to make sure still that process is engaging, and that it's going to, they're going to go away and talk about, oh, I didn't get the role, but how fantastic it would be, and this is what I know I need to do for the next time in order to be able to get that role, So I think it's about understanding that element of it and how well that's executed within organisations. And there's various, you know, this is not a one size fits all. It depends on the organisation, where they're at in that journey. It depends on what they've already done, what tools they use in terms of keeping in touch with candidates post-offer and all of that sort of thing. So each organisation is very different. The type of recruitment that each organisation is doing as well can hugely influence that. So not everything is going to be right for everyone, but it needs to be measured correctly as well, Julie. You know, we can quite often say, oh, you know, it's excellent. We've got this really sturdy interview process we have 4 questions on there. Everybody's answered exactly the same question, and they're all scored, you know, excellent, good, fair, or poor. Everyone's interpretation of excellent, good, fair and poor is different. So, you know, it's about us understanding, you know, what each organisation's interpretation of good is as well. So we'll look at the material, we'll look at the way that organisations are measuring each candidate, but we will then need to spend a certain element of time investing in what good does look like in that organisation. So that could be, you know, sitting on the floor to understand, actually, show me a top performer, show me somebody who's come through, who's gone through this really clearly developed career development timeline, I guess, where, you know, somebody started at one role and they've really excelled and they've done well and they've, you know, shown exemplary cultural values of the organisation. Show me that person. So it's about understanding to that organisation what their interpretation of good looks like, and feeding that back as well, because quite often you can have, certainly with senior stakeholders managing those expectations of what good looks like, you can have a different view, so that when we create something that will measure what good looks like in terms of the interview process and how that's fed back and how that's washed up, you know, we understand that what we are measuring is ultimately going to be what that organisation needs. And we can make recommendations for how that's measured. So whether it's a values-based assessment process, whether it's interactive, whether it's task-based, you know, whether it's logical thinking, you know, all of these different elements can be tagged on depending on the type of recruitment. But ultimately, it's about understanding what the organisation wants, what that is, what that good looks like. Have we really got under the skin to understand what that good looks like, and is that correct? And then creating something which we can then join, we can roll out, so we can absorb the whole interview and assessment process. We can run that as an organisation, or again, we can tailor something that's then gifted back to the organisation for their internal TA team to execute. And we just track the measure and review and work alongside the organisation that way.
And you also do an element of calibration and hiring manager training within that service, don't you? So I think it's a given that everybody knows how to interview, but that's not the case, especially with the world of inclusivity and making sure that there's a fair playing field for everyone and it's more equitable. So is that an area that you look at, of bringing in sort of inclusive recruitment practice into hiring manager training?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I mean, you've probably covered quite a few of the spots there, Julie. So even if we do tailor things and we can give some information, it's about the bigger picture, isn't it? So some of the things that we look at are about removing unconscious bias. So for example, a lot of organisations will review CVs. They will submit the CVs to the hiring managers, you know, and it's about understanding unconscious bias, what it is, and whether, you know, all of the elements to remove that have been removed as far as physically possible. So, you know, removing the name, for example, removing the address, so that all of those things can't be factored in. So you're just really, really looking at that person's core skills, career history, and making a decision on progressing based on that factual information. But you're quite correct in terms of, you know, even the interview process. The style in which somebody is measured needs to be reviewed, and each manager will have a different style. And I think in our training process, what we don't want to do is remove the authenticity of the staff that are in there, you know, so everyone will bring something different to the table in terms of that. And that's why interview panels are great, you know, and again, for the right level, but each person will have a different interpretation of that. And those panels are excellent because they will take a different steer, and that's what makes organisations great, when that's varied. I love that. But I think it's about making sure that we retain that element, we bring that organisation to life, but actually making sure that the way that the interviews, the assessment processes are executed are accessible. You know, the testing that is used, is that accessible? You know, have all of the different elements being considered. You know, the colour, if there's a presentation, for example, where you're going to have the opportunity to talk about the organisation, you know, have somebody senior on there, you know, that's had, you know, this wonderful career and they've really worked their way through the roots of the organisation. You know, is the presentation accessible? You know, are there subtitles on there? There's a whole host of different things that you can look at. But the training element of that, yeah, absolutely, we'll look at that, and just, it's food for thought. It's food for thought, and saying, actually, let me see what you do now. Okay, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And truly, sometimes organisations may only be at the stage where they can take 20% of our recommendations, and that, you know, that is what they can do right now. But it's about us supporting them on an ongoing basis to create that roadmap of saying, okay, in 6 months' time, is the desire to have the other 40%, you know, completed, and I guess, you know, supporting them through that journey. Things will change over time as well, like, you know, technologies to support this will change. You know, there's really good things out there that, you know, make life easier when it comes to inclusivity. You know, and sometimes organisations just aren't aware of those things, free tools that can be used. So yes, it's about us working in partnership with their internal teams to support the journey.
So each one of the services that you've talked about, Kerri, can be used modular on their own without any of the other services. Just explain a little bit about that, if somebody's interested in one of the particular areas that we've talked about.
Yeah, so I would always say reach out, have a conversation. Julie, I'm sure there's contact details at the end of this. But each of those services, it's a conversation where, you know, we would come out to see you, to understand what your challenges are, you know, and if you wanted to take 2 of those services and combine those, we can. We can also work with internal operational, I guess, requirements in terms of what your journey looks like and deliverables that you need to timeline-wise adhere to. But absolutely, people could just do the marketing diagnostic, for example. You know, we've had organisations that have said, you know, actually the full recruitment process at the moment, we've just reviewed that, so we're not in the position to review that now. We think we've got this really excellent talent value proposition. You know, but actually, is it really represented well digitally? Are we using all of the correct platforms? You know, and all of these different things. SEO, for example, is something that people are really interested in. So you could just go for one element of those, and certainly the vetting and pre-screening, for example, that can quite often just sit alone. And if it is just market insight that somebody is after, just to understand what the rest of the world is doing at the moment in terms of their offering benefits, for example, you know, clients can come to us just to gain insight from that arm as well.
Well, that's been really beneficial from my perspective to understand a bit more. Obviously, I've helped in terms of the market and collateral, but hearing you bring it to life, it's been really helpful for me. And I hope it has for you guys listening that have joined with your cup of coffee or your sandwich, or you're watching us on replay, because I'm very aware from all of the data that the majority of views of these live sessions are generally after the event. So if anybody wants any more information or they want to reach out, they can get hold of Kerri. I'll pop contact details in the notes at the end of the recording, so you can watch it back live, or you can find us at Green Bean on either LinkedIn or our website, which is greenbeanrpo.com. So thank you very much today, Kerri, for that. I know I've totally took you out of your comfort zone. You're used to being face-to-face with clients. It's the first time we've put you digitally. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure today.
Oh, no, thank you for being a great host, Julie. My pleasure.
And we'll see you all again soon. I think we've got Talking Talent Live. We're back to the usual format back at the end of March. So we'll see you then. Okay, bye.